Good morning, everybody. At least for us, it's morning. Um, we welcome you to this Friday Zoom audio. I'm Jan Jeremias, and a little bit about me for those of you who are listening who don't know me. I've spent over 35 years involved in healthcare in one way or another. And for the past 20, I've blended my clinical research roots with a love for holistic wellness to support both people and their pets in living longer, fuller lives. I help to empower people to see the whole picture of their well-being, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and help them create a simple, meaningful blueprint for health. I love being creative and I love connecting with other people. And so I'm really grateful to share this path with my dear friend and collaborator, Mary Jane McQueen, or MJ. We believe in bringing kindness into the world, one creative project, one breath, and one conversation at a time. So a heartfelt thank you to Mary Jane and a big thank you to every one of you for being part of this community and for joining us here for these Friday Zoom audio events, because these conversations are truly precious. So, Mary Jane, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, thank you everyone for being here. And I know those presents on the call today I know you already, you might know me already, but for those that might be listening to the recording later on our YouTube channel, I am Mary Jane, or MJ, and I'm the owner of my own graphic designer creative studio. Um, and really my career has spanned more than 30 years in corporate marketing, and then the last 6 years as an entrepreneur. And I really love to have fun while locking arms with my clients to help bring their vision to life, whether they're a small business entrepreneur or really somebody celebrating their own milestone personal event. Um, I love to support in whatever way is feasible for them, of course. And always, I'm honored to be here with Jan, and I love this community and the way it's growing and the beautiful emotional sacred space that we're creating together. And so thank you all for being here and for being part of Spirit Born Imaginings. It means the world to Jan and I, and um, we look forward to these conversations. And we definitely missed you last week when we took a brief pause for the U.S. Thanksgiving. So just I'm just so glad to be here. And I guess I will.
Should we? Yep, I was going to say maybe our poem.
Yes. You have to bear with me for a moment because I'm working on one screen today and I'm so not used to it. So I was like, where did it go? Where did it go? Because I do not have it memorized, just for the record. Um, it's an untitled poem, but it's a poem by a lady named Jenny Mannion. And it reads, I'm thankful for my head because it houses my mind. It allows me to contemplate, interact, figure out the challenges that I find. Thank you to my face. There truly is only one me. I'm grateful for my mouth that tastes and smiles, my nose to smell, my eyes to see. Thank you to my neck and to my throat that allows me to swallow, my voice that allows me to speak my truth and know what creativity and truths to express and follow. Thank you to my shoulders. Sometimes it feels like they bear a huge weight. I've used them to let loved ones cry on, and they remind me to sit up straight. I'm grateful for my arms and hands, which let me hold loved ones near. They also allow me to write and feed myself, dress myself with clothes to wear. I'm blessed to have my heart, the center of my love and intuition. I know I can tune in here to connect with all living things and my life's mission. I'm indebted to my stomach, which helps digest all the delicious food that I eat, my womb, which housed my children, which made my life complete. I'm grateful to my back for its strength in encasing my vertebrae. I love and am blessed for my hips, which allow me to dance and sway. I am blessed to have legs and feet that allow me connection to this earth. I love my whole body, mind, and soul, and am determined to know my self-worth. I am grateful to have cells communicating and my blood that flows without a thought, for my nerves, bones, and teeth, and for all this life has taught. I am committed to give thanks to my body that has carried me to this day. I'm committing to affirming the health I do have, knowing it will help my life in every single way.
Thank you so much, Mary Jane, for sharing that. So it's such a wonderful poem. Um, so welcome, friends. We're so grateful you're here with us today as we gather for everyday miracles, gratitude for the five senses. This morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time it is for you, we come together to slow down, to breathe, and to remember the simple but profound truth that much of our joy, comfort, and connection arises through the senses we often move past without noticing. Our ability to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch shapes the texture of our days. These senses ground us, guide us, support us, and continually invite us back into presence. When we pay attention to them, really pay attention, something shifts. Life becomes a little bit more vibrant, a little more spacious, a little bit more meaningful, and a little richer. Gratitude naturally grows when we notice the warmth of a morning cup of tea, the sound of a familiar voice, the softness of a blanket, the scent of something calming, or the colors and movements around us. These small sensory moments are the everyday miracles that help us feel anchored and alive. So today is about exploring those miracles together, not in a perfect, polished way, but in a real and conversational way, sharing what we notice, what supports us, and where we find delight or comfort in the sensory world. This space is for reflection, curiosity, and connection, a place to honor the simple experiences that can nourish us in powerful ways. We are so glad you're here. So let's begin.
It's such an interesting conversation. I really like the poem as well, just how it brings our attention to all of those things that sometimes we take for granted, that we've been afforded such beautiful experience, even if we're suffering from some discomfort in some of those parts, some of those senses. It's just the poem. I loved how it brought that sense of acknowledgement, being aware, because we are fortunate, and sometimes we forget how fortunate we can be, even when we might be not in our peak, shall we say.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that our senses are the gateway to savoring the little things, the things that we can take for granted. Um, the It gives the flavor to life. It really does. It keeps us present and grounded in the moment. If we truly, and I love the word savor, if we really savor the experiences we have. I loved this article that I read by David Stendhal Rast. He says, God's inexhaustible poetry comes to me in five languages: seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, and tasting. All the rest is interpretation, literary criticism, as it were, not the poetry itself. Poetry resists translation. It can be fully experienced only in its original language. And this is all the more true of the divine poetry of the senses or sensuousness. How could I make sense of life if not through my senses? And that last line especially, because I don't know if we think of our senses as giving us like that much clarity in life, that much guidance.
Yeah, it's very true, right? Because we have a tendency, or as humans, because and instead of being the human beings, we're the human doings. So sometimes we forget all of those little nuances, those little things that really do bring our world to life. And we often take those for granted. So I love that. I love the way he spoke of it, speaking of um in five languages. It's very true when you think about it. The interpretations are all different, depending on which language happens to be speaking the loudest at the moment.
Absolutely. And I also loved that whole idea of five languages. Um, and I think it is that we are in some ways on sensory overload in so many different ways, right? We're exposed to so much information, so much noise, um, so much outside stimulation that I think it almost drowns out, unless we're intentional, it can drown out what like our normal senses are sensing. Unless you turn down the volume of outside noise, you miss so many other sounds and signals. If traffic's really loud, you don't really hear the birds. You don't hear the natural sounds. And so, if we're so bombarded, I think it's almost like we become numb and therefore we don't experience all the other nuances of life. It becomes, I don't know, it's almost like you're drowning. Um, I think I commented once that one of my least favorite experiences, and I was there for a conference, is when I went to Disney World. And if you and we stayed at one of the hotels at Disney, and we're
Oh,
walking around the paths, and they pump in sound so they have like fake cricket sounds and fake like all these sounds. And then you get on like buses that take you around like you know, Disney World, and everything has video screens and sound. And I was just like, I got off and I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, no wonder kids are so hyper. Like that's how I felt because I felt like, oh my gosh, it was never like peaceful and never just like kind of let me just walk through and hear the sounds that I hear. Let me truly experience this for myself. It was like they were forcing an experience on me.
mm, that's true. It wasn't just a sort of an absorbed experience. It was it was an overload experience.
It's,
Um,
yeah, it was like, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was like you will have this experience while you are here.
it's like you will be grateful.
That's right. That's right. And but I think that we have that all the time. And not only with that, so it's information, it's sound, it's um excessive light with, we don't like a lack of natural light. And some of that is, the number of people, um, street lights, cities where there's very little exposure to, let's say, night sky or stars and just the light of the moon. And so I think that all of a sudden it's like slowing down so that we're, one of Seamus's favorite things is slowing down to be able to filter out those things and allowing yourself space to be able to experience. And it really does have this ability to anchor us into wherever we are. Um, so Seamus, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. Yeah, it's a lovely poem, and the theme of gratitude, like gratitude is wonderful. It comes with space, I think, as well, because sometimes we're so busy with the five senses, we forget to be grateful for the very simplest of things like the cells. We've talked about this before, John, I think about the cells in our body and the wonderful job they do. They're not trying to be anything else. They're just being themselves and being grateful for who they are. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned, I think, maybe for human beings to be able to actually be grateful for just the person we are at our very being rather than the games we play outside ourselves. And, the five senses brought to mind, like, yeah, it's an overwhelming experience when we're attuned. And, the Disney example of being exposed and maybe overexposed and bombarded on the outside. Maybe there's the sixth sense and maybe other senses that we're not aware of that was coming to mind as you were reading the poem and talking about those five senses, is that there's another very important one when we create that space, is the space to actually connect um, through the electromagnetic energy. HeartMath talk about this an awful lot around we are so I suppose, so embedded in the five senses, we forget about the sense of noticing within, like when we begin to kind of rebalance and notice these five senses and put them in their place and create space and quieten them, I suppose, really is what I'm trying to say. There's a great sense of another sense that's available to us in the space and the quietness of noticing the thought, the emotion, and the curiosity that comes with getting beneath. Well, why is that thought there? Where is that thought coming from? That kind of it's a lovely counterbalance to the external lived experience. There's also a very vivid internal lived experience that I think we don't often get to savor, using that word savor again, because we're so embedded in the outside world and the doing outside that we forget about the power of the inner experience and getting curious with the thoughts and the emotions and how that literally translates in ways we don't understand and how we connect with ourselves and how that creates the platform for how we connect with other people as well in an invisible way, in an unknown sixth sense. When we're so connected to self, we somehow are more connected to other people as well and engage better with other people from that space, um, in a lovely blend and mix of the five senses that we all know and love, but also there's an extra dimension to the sixth sense that I think underpins and even enhances our ability to engage through those five senses when we're operating with a connection to this other less tangible sense, I suppose. So that's kind of what's coming to mind as we were kind of talking about this today.
Beautiful, Seamus, and I agree. I mean, I think that when we really tap into, first of all, our senses, and then, just so we're present for them, um, there is this element of a quieting, a deepening, where we create space for whatever other senses there might be, the sense of intuition, um, of being able to, be a part, be one with the world, the universe, as opposed to separate from it. Um, and I think the ability of gratitude does have, does create a space for us to find that. Uh, I think it connects us to our outer world and our inner world, that feeling of gratitude. It allows us to, really be a part of something that is ourselves, but also something far greater than than ourselves. And in that article, which maybe I'll share, one of the articles by David Sendell Rass, he actually talks about that. He actually talks about the ability that once you, let's say, feel, um, you're in touch with that sense of feeling, of sensation. He said it's almost like you can't help but feel the pain of the world. Once you really sit down and you savor this feeling of, this the sense of taste of your morning coffee, or, the fruit that you eat, you can't help but think about those who got that to you and got it to your table. And then any, in inequalities or any sort of, you know, um, n- inequalities that tend to happen amongst different peoples, the people who bring it to you, or the farmers, all of a sudden their plight becomes your plight because you are experiencing whatever you're experiencing so fully that it expands you in some way. It makes you larger than you are. Mary Jane.
Yeah, I love that because as you were speaking, it made me think of it's interesting how bringing gratitude to the five senses or others, sixth sense, intuition, whatever you want to focus to, but it's interesting how by bringing our presence and our acknowledgement to those five or six senses, really, if that's, that's that acknowledging them and being grateful for those senses and that ability is, you're turning inward. But isn't it interesting by turning inward, it actually helps you to open up and be more aware and tune in out outward, in the sense that you suddenly become aware that I'm experiencing this. And then suddenly the realization is like suddenly like, oh, outside of me, this is happening. And because of these other things happening, I am taking in this thing. So it's an interesting give and take perspective between, you know, turning inward and acknowledging and be grateful for the senses that we have, and that we've been given as a gift, and then taking that gift and radiating that outward and understanding, expanding our view, seeing that how much of the outside world really does contribute, and just being aware of that. So it's an awareness, I guess. Here I am,
Mhm.
Jan, back to open awareness. I feel
Absolutely. Um, but, and I'll read another just short paragraph from this article by David Stendhal Rast, which was actually, obviously we've had a great impact on us this week. He says, we tend to overlook the close connection between responsiveness and responsibility, between sensuousness and social challenge. Outside and inside are of one piece. And as we learn to really look with our eyes, we begin to look with our heart also. He said, no wonder that those in power, those interested in maintaining the status quo, look to askance at anything that helps people come to their senses.
I love that. And I love that expression. It's like come to your senses. It's such
Right,
a
exactly. It was such a good play on words,
yes,
right?
it's absolutely true. It's like come to your senses. I love that. It's one of those expressions that I haven't that I hadn't heard in quite some time. It sounds very parental. I don't know why. I
It does.
love that.
And it reminds me of this whole article reminded me of something that, my teacher used to say, my teacher, one of my first yoga teachers who I did my training with, used to say, when we breathe, we not only breathe for ourselves, we breathe for the world.
Ooh,
And I remember, every time I sit down on my mat or I sit and I'm meditating and I consciously breathe, that always comes to mind that I'm not only breathing for myself, I'm breathing for the world.
and
And
and the plants.
and the plants, exactly. And the plants, but which was one of my posts this week
Yes.
on LinkedIn. But yeah, and it's really, I think it takes that these practices, which sometime in the, maybe in some populations or some people might view as being selfish, are really selfless.
Yes, exactly.
Al, please.
Yeah, very interesting. when you say about sense, so talking about sometimes the teacher tell you have some common sense. So it's whether we are thinking, when the student sitting down listening to a lecturer or teacher, they'll tell you just have common sense and and get the answer, and you will score in your exams, something. So every time they talk about senses, so when we come to the reality of the world, so the sense is actually so important. So my acronym for this week of the word smell is sensing, meaningful, emotional, lineage, lovingly. So it's more coming from the word sense, sensing it so meaningfully. So for example, when you're out in the forest, or even so you're sensing the grounding of the soil underneath us, underneath our feet. Then you're grounding the plants, the trees, the leaves. So when we are out there, so we're sensing, even when we are back in our hometown or something, when you go back into the house, you can feel the sense, the smell, smell of the belonging, when at home and all that. So you have the great feeling, or even going back to the old school. We are reminiscing the old childhood memories. Where the teachers are teaching us and all that. Sometimes certain teachers have bad foul and all that. So when it comes to if you're sitting right in front of the classroom, then it's so funny. When they're talking. We are trying to just holding our nose and all that. Trying to escape from that and all that. So it's so important. It links back to our lineage. Our ancestral healing of this senses. So that's why we create a lot of emotions. From our beginning of life till the stage where we are having so much wisdom by having just the sense of the smell. So it's so important. It's so one of the most important. I mean, like from the sense, even you're closing your eyes, you can smell so many things. You can smell your mom's cooking, your baking, and all types of different food flavors or anything happening, or even the aromatic oils or essential oils that you're having during like a massage, or or whether you're in a meditation, you're just burning some incense or something. So when we're doing meditation, there's so many things happening in our lives. So we just have to appreciate the sense of smell. Yeah, my 2 words for this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Well, of course, you're talking about smell, so it's very important to me, and what I do. But when it does, and I love what you shared about connecting to our ancestors and connecting to our history, because I think that our senses do that. You know, they have the ability to take us back, um, to different times, to different periods in our lives, um, to connect us to something that, our lineage, um, different experiences we've had. And that's the other thing the word that comes to mind is, I think that you can read, and you talk about book knowledge and common sense, like you can read anything you want to read. You can read about an aroma or read a recipe and everything, but there is nothing like actually tasting or smelling that. It impacts different parts of the brain. It becomes lived and remembered. So it becomes a true experience, a feeling, a sensation. And so whether it's something you see and all of a sudden you remember it because it's gone in through the visual sense of vision or seeing, or something you taste or smell or touch, there's some sort of imprint that it has on you. And so that experience is imprinted. So I mean, for me, it becomes so much more powerful
Well,
and
it's
so
so
much more life changing. Sorry, Mary Jane, go ahead.
no, 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 it's fine. I was waiting. I thought you finished it, so I just started. Yeah, well, it's true, right? It's like what we were when we were doing some research, of course, for today's conversation. It's just interesting how, they just said, like, well, obviously gratitude is they were saying that, gratitude is a moment to moment awareness practice, which is really true. It's just being aware, as I was sort of alluding to earlier. but also just that whole idea of like they were saying, was in one of the articles they were saying that, thinking about something we're grateful for activates brain regions that really are associated with or affiliated with reward and regulation. And so, when you were speaking to, and I was also speaking to, like those are some of the greatest memories, and for feeling of well-being, just thinking about, especially, depending on your traditions, but just, when there's a special holiday or some special thing being cooked or baked or whatever, it's amazing how just that sense of smell and that thing brings that sort of a feeling of well-being. And if I'm going to be honest, depending on what it is, if it's something really savory and delicious, it can almost have that sense of taste involved even without tasting. I'll just use the little nose icon. It's so
I
cute.
know. I know. That was very, yeah. Yes, Austin savory. And then our senses sort of enhance each other, because they're so intertwined. Our sense of taste is really governed the majority by the sense of smell.
Yes.
And how much each one kind of enhances the other and makes it even richer when they're combined. And if you go out in nature and you experience a forest, you have that visual stimulation of seeing that, whatever in nature that you're looking at, that rich forest or, the ocean view, you have the smells that are created by the plants themselves. Um, you have the sounds that are, that come in from from the wind or from the movement of the leaves or the waves. So it becomes truly experience like this group, a full sensory experience. And so, yeah, yeah, I'll stop there. I forgot one thing I was going to say, but maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah, it is. I love that. I was just thinking when you were talking about the being in the forest, it's like, yeah, there is so many senses. And I just love, when perhaps well, it could be anywhere, it could be even in out in a farmer's field or something, but that sense in the forest, that's the one that the visual that came to me was when you were speaking to it. It's like, just after, I mean, there may have been rain or there's dew or whatever, and there's that smell of the damp earth, that
Mhm.
earthy richness. It's just there's something really powerful, um just with that sense, just really just taking in the thing. It's like, and it's, I guess, literally it's the ground, so it is grounding in the sense it brings us back to you know like just being aware of the power of nature, and the power of nature even in ourselves and as human beings, the wonderful gifts we've been given in our wonderful senses as well, and just being grateful for those things. I mean, when Jen and I were talking about, what we were sort of like thinking like, oh, what would be some things, and we thought, gratitude really seems to be something, because that we really wanted to focus on, for the next few weeks, because it was just, sometimes we just take so many things for granted, and just being aware and love ourselves for where we're at, and just taking in that the beauty that's all around us. So
Yeah, and then one of the things as we were reading over the past few weeks about gratitude is it's really a practice of creating within yourself the feeling that you have. Like there is this, if for it to be powerful and a powerful practice, it's actually reliving almost the experience of what you're grateful for. So it's going back to those feelings that you had, the warmth that you had, where you feel it in your body, and truly experiencing it so that when you move out of it, it has had some sort of impact or it becomes that experience once again. So in everything we've read, if you really wanted to have such a like a powerful effect, I mean, yes, people have gratitude lists and write gratitude, like have gratitude groups, things like that. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but they were saying that the greatest impact comes for when you actually think of something you're grateful for and then actually go back to the feeling you had and kind of relive that, whatever that thing that you're grateful for, and to actually savor it and actually embody it for a few minutes and then to move on. And so I really loved that because, having and wanting to use gratitude as a tool, as a practice, it really, it just reminded me to do that when I read that. It was like, oh, right, I have to, it's just not saying what I'm grateful for. The other thing, and I mentioned this on Saturday in the Healthy Neighborhoods Project, for some of you who are on, it's actually saying it out loud. Like, I am thankful for, and actually hearing it in your own voice, which I thought was and going back to old traditions of, I don't know how many people actually write handwritten thank you notes. I grew up writing thank you notes. Does anybody else grow up writing thank you notes?
Oh, I did.
Yes, me too. It's
And I
like,
still, whether it's a thank you note or a card in the mail or just a simple thing, those things I am grateful for. I just love that sense of, realizing that people are thinking about are thinking about me. I love Al. He finds like the best
I know. I'm just
icons.
thinking that Al's icons. I'm like,
I'm like, first I'm like, oh, it's a mail slot. Okay. But no, it definitely uplifts me just to know that somebody's taken a moment and
Mhm.
realizing that they also are thinking of me. It's kind of like,
That's right.
well, another sense, right, of touch. So it's like touch without actually physically touching. It's like, oh, this
Absolutely.
person sent a piece of themselves to me. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said that. And then I think that it's, so it's not only influencing you when you send it, you're acknowledging it, but you're impacting somebody else. Like it ripples out. And so that's really powerful. Rosemary, please.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on that, writing the thank you notes. I'm good at writing them, but I'm terrible at getting them to the mailbox. So sometimes they'll sit here for a long, long time, or I've even forgotten to mail it, but I've handwritten it. Um, but I wanted to touch on, Jan, you were talking about the sensory overload or overwhelm from Disney. And it made me think when we started talking about the senses of walking in nature. I love forest bathing. What a contrast that is. Just walking in nature and then your overwhelm of sounds and sensory explosion there. When I walk through the woods, sometimes I'll have a meditation piece playing from YouTube. And other times I've walked in complete silence. And to hear the sounds of the crickets or the different birds that are singing, the smell of the ground, the trees, the overhang of the trees as I'm walking in the path. Those senses so come alive, the grounding, the energy that you get. And I'll even walk through and say thank you to the trees because the trees help give us life. They give us the oxygen. They clean the air for us. They fertilize the ground. So just to open up that sensory experience of walking in the woods forest bathing is so powerful. And once I really got in tune with that, it it made such a difference in how I was reacting to emotional stress or stresses from the outside world. And because I would tend to go close in or become angry, but that experience has taught me to appreciate and show the gratitude of everything that we have in this world. And you start to notice the little things that you never noticed before. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Shinrin-yoku, that is the Japanese word for forest bathing. It's one of the reasons I love essential oils because it brings nature into me when I can't get outside. So it reminds me, those smells kind of take me there. In weather, if weather doesn't cooperate necessarily, and I get to be outside. But there are other experiences. Yeah, go ahead, Rosemary. We're going to say something. Okay.
Yes,
Uh,
I I wanted to share one other thing I forgot. So we were talking about forest bathing about
mhm.
2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. It was February. It was cold, and I was still walking in the woods, and I literally did a forest bathing because I fell into a puddle. So that experience, the senses of falling in the water dripping out of my coat down into my boots, it really made me appreciate the idea of forest bathing.
I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
It
So
was a big
so you really took a forest bath, a forest bath. Uh, that's very funny. But we can have those experiences without nature. Like the other way I think about this whole very sensory kind of experience, um, I think bathing itself is a very sensory experience. And I think most of the time, the feeling of the water on your skin or the sound of the water as it comes out, if you do have an aroma in that environment. So I think that it becomes a very sensory experience. And then the other thing is cooking. I think is a very sensory experience because it's tactile. So if you're making food, like I always think of kneading dough, there is a very sensory experience with that happens. You have the smell of whatever's cooking. So I think it can be a very, an access point, one to gratitude, but also to being very present. And when we are present, there's nothing, it automatically kind of, the next step it's like we're present and the next is not far to go, basically, to become grateful. I think you become present and then you realize, like, there's a realization or an awareness, your word today, Mary Jane, there's an awareness of like, oh, this is wonderful. And in that wonder, there's this feeling of, oh, okay. It's the feeling of like, even with all the sensory things you get in the forest, there's also this feeling of awe and wonder, which you can't help but feel grateful. And so it almost like it's just like one kind of leads into the other. And then it becomes like self-propagating. It's like, oh, I'm grateful. And then you recognize where you are and it deepens that gratitude. And so it just becomes like it magnifies itself.
Yeah, well, it's true, and then it's true, absolutely. And I'm sorry, Rosemary, I'm still chuckling about your forest bathing. Um, I can picture myself doing the same thing because that just seems to be the way I operate in this world. I don't know if it's sensory overload. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm just I should be more aware, but apparently sometimes I'm not. My head is in the clouds. So, but yeah, I just loved what you're saying. Yeah, it's true with cooking. So it's like anything, the cooking and baking, things like that, all those things really engage all of the senses. And so it's just good. And even if you can't do any of those things, I mean, this is something, it comes and goes in my world just because sometimes I get very busy in my busyness, I should say. But when I take time for the gratitude practice, even if it's for a really short period of time, and just write down some things, it really does. It just brings me a sense of well-being and you know and it's a really good way to start the day, especially if there's a lot of other things happening in your immediate area or with the people that you love or whatever it happens to be at any given moment. It's just taking that few minutes just to um listen, to be aware of what your body is telling you and just being truly grateful for all of the things that the messages it's giving.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up something really, one of the things you just said, Mary Jane, was just so valuable and kind of sparked my, like not my interest, but like I'm like, oh, my awareness or my is how many of those experiences were shared with other people, you
Yes.
know, and so that was really like I think about those memories of cooking or whatever. Or I think about my mom
Mm.
or my grandmother, and
Yes.
so all of a sudden it becomes, you know, being out in nature, but being out in nature with other people. So a hike with others, camping, as
Hmm.
I know we both have camped, Mary
Yes.
Jane, camping, because that was very much a family activity that I did. So it was with other people or other beings. I mean, hiking brings up hiking with Tonka or hiking with my previous dog, Casey. Um, and that experience of almost experiencing it through their eyes in addition to your own eyes.
Yes, because they have a natural sense, especially dogs in general, have a natural sense of curiosity when you're out in nature. They're perpetually, they're perpetually sniffing and exploring, and so they are really in tune with all of their sensory um, intake, especially when they're out in nature. And that's in
Hmm.
a sense, we've domesticated them, but in a sense, that's where their history lies, right? In nature.
That's
Good
right. And
reminder.
that's right. And that's how they are one with the world. I mean, they they are one through their senses. I mean, that's how they experience their world. I- At one point or another, our sense of smell was a very much a dynamic part of our survival and our abilities to navigate our world. In some ways, it still is. I mean, huge amount of money is spent scenting things,
Hmm.
but using our sense of smell as a tool, basically, or as a warning or as a way to observe people and to kind of get an impression of people is really no longer done anymore or has been numbed to some extent or downplayed.
Right.
As our other senses got much louder, kind of that one narrowed.
That's very,
Mm.
very true. And sometimes I think our sense of our sense of hearing, or maybe I should say listening, um, has also diminished.
Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody knows that when you are surrounded, like if you're constantly surrounded by sound, you become numb to that sound. If you're constantly exposed to a smell, all of a sudden you don't notice it as much.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, some of it is the brain's ability to function, to move on, and some of it is just our awareness, which all of a sudden we become accustomed to it or we adapt and then we don't notice as much. It's kind of like, it always reminds me of like, I don't know if this is related, but it always reminds me of when you're sleeping and you hear a sound. If you're sleeping and you hear a sound and you incorporate that sound into your dreams.
Dreams, yes,
Yeah, it's like you hear something and all of a sudden there's a train or something. It becomes a sound in your dream. Sorry,
exactly.
I
No,
just thought
no,
of that.
it's no, but it's true, right? Because sometimes it might not be something that we're actually aware of when we're that we're aware of, and in our waking life, but sometimes it's amazing thing. But yeah, I was gonna ask Al the same question because he said he
Good.
put in the chat about did you sniff my and it so, and it looks like a birthday cake tomorrow. So I'm guessing Al, is it your birthday tomorrow?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, happy
Oh boy,
advanced birthday.
birthday. Yeah, happy birthday.
Awesome. Well, I
Yeah.
wish I could smell the birthday cake, but no. I'll imagine it. How's that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, imagine it. You'll have to post a picture
There you go.
so that, yeah, so
With
we
this
get a
cake.
visual at least. We get a visual, you
Yes.
know, with the gift of Zoom, which is really, if we think about the senses and we think about Zoom, we often get visual and we often get the sound and we can recreate those feelings and even those smells, right? Because we talk about them. But I'm still waiting for smell-o-vision. Like, I mean, I really am. It would be really so much easier for what I do. If I could just sit there and say, okay, and just, somehow recreate that smell for someone if they ask me.
Of an essential oil so that
But
when we're trying to
yeah,
meditate, we
exactly.
have some. Yes, I hear you. Yeah. Well, yes, that could be a plus or a minus, but I'm not gonna go there. Smell.
Yeah. No, I was talking about it being a plus. Yeah, one of you were talking about grounding and earth and
Yes.
everything. So one of my favorite oils in Rosemary with her forest bathing is vetiver, and vetiver smells like soil. It smells like earth. And so I was talking to my chiropractor one day and I said to him, it smells like dirt. And he said to me, Jan, I really don't think that's a good smelling point, that good selling point or smelling point. He was like, I don't really know that people really want to, like, they think of smelling dirt. It's like not, very attractive, but it really does smell like rich earth, rich soil. It's very, very grounding. It's like one of my favorite oils. And so, but yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
hard to describe sometimes the aromas.
Well, thank you for bringing a really big belly laugh to me just now. Dirt.
You're welcome.
It smells like dirt. I'm like, it's funny how we interpret the smell of dirt to be different, or to me it is, anyways, from earth. Even
Right,
made of dirt.
exactly. Or soil,
Yeah, soil
like
is
a
probably
rich,
better, but
rich, yeah, rich soil,
soil.
but it does have a different, like, I think we think of it, I think of dirt as being in my home, like my home is dirty,
Dust
like
bunnies.
so, dust bunnies, exactly, or dog fur, in my case.
Hey, Austin saying I've been swearing my whole life I could smell cold temperatures. I concur with that because I'm like, I'll walk outside. I'm like, oh, I smell. Yes, I smell the cold. There is a definite smell to when, especially as the seasons change or whatever. You can just there's the smell of cold. I don't know. I agree, Austin. So it's not just your your imagination because I often say that I walk outside when it's starting to get cooler temperatures and go, oh, it smells like cold. Like it just smells like, or smells like snow. Like just there's a certain sense of that. I can feel when it wants to snow, but I also can smell snow. So,
Um, I agree with you. And there's also something like I definitely, definitely can walk out and I'll be like, it feels like snow. And I think you have the same thing with like thunderstorms. There's this smell, there's that smell of a thunderstorm that when you go outside, you're like, oh, or just rain. You're like, oh, it smells like rain.
so yes, I think, but sometimes it's we don't I just think I think some of us may be more in tune with that senses of thing because some people I've had look at me very strange when I say, "Oh, it smells like snow," and they look at me like, "Smells like snow?" I'm like, "Yeah, it smells like snow." It's like- so I can
Hmm.
agree. Austin.
Yes, a little hesitant to speak on this, but I feel I'm just the right person to. Growing up with we'll frame it neurodivergence and sensory things. A fascinating take on this is if you've ever like read about or researched sensory deprivation and the effects of people who might, benefit from those. Um, and basically without giving a lecture on it, I liked that what they were finding or affirming for a lot of people was how there's like this connection between assigned meaning but also perceived ability or whatever within our senses. And obviously they were just doing, the basic ones. It wasn't very esoteric, but I love that like these silliness, like smelling things that normally people wouldn't say, oh, you can smell. And I think that maybe what is trying to come across here is one person's way of even perceiving that can be very different, although the communication is the same. And I know we've all actually talked about a lot of these kinds of things before. So I wanted to add on that. And I like also when we began, um, because it meant something at least special to really me to be grateful for them. Because in an odd way, um, I was I was not grateful for the senses because they almost gave so many mixed signals and just my own journey and trying to understand how I was understanding them. So I have a history of yes, like being grateful for every sense, the five and any others. So thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you, Austin. That was wonderful. And you know what you were saying, one of the things that just like is I think that sometimes the way we experience something is beyond the description of words. So we use language that, like something smells or something tastes because we know people can relate to it on some level. But I think that so much of it is like beyond our ability to language it. And so it's our kind of way of communicating so that, we can connect with others or even can explain it to ourselves sometimes. And so all of a sudden we try to give it words or feelings or sensations or, to create something so that there's some sort of connection um, to it. And so that's what, yeah, to belong to it. Absolutely. And then to belong to the natural world, right? To realize that we're a part of the natural world. So I think that that was truly powerful.
I love this. What an awesome conversation because it yet again it's just brought back to my attention, to my awareness of just being truly grateful and present in the moment. And that's really what the senses do, is bring us into the present moment, whether we want to be or not.
And then the last thing that it made me think of was this feeling of that there are certain people who are gifted in one sensory, like sensory ability. You have musicians who where sound becomes like the way they hear a sound is so different than maybe someone else hears a sound. Or for Mary Jane, like an artist, it's like becomes so much more because they see almost beyond what, I don't want to say what other people see or what other beings see, you know, and maybe it's somebody who's a perfumist or someone who specializes in something like that, where all of a sudden, the sense of smell or, a sommelier where for grapes. I mean, so, and some of it is taught and learned, but some of it is this natural gift of being able to discern and to decipher and to hear things that are beyond the normal hearing of someone else.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that. It's as I've been doing doing some of my inner work and things like that. It's one thing that I've really realized that um my creativity, and about seeing things in a different way. But it's really for me, it's about tapping into my intuition, whether I've recognized that in the past or not, but it's like tapping into my intuition and sort of sensing, feeling um of the way something looks. And even for me it's fascinating when we, because I often, as you know, Jan, I go to symphony concerts with my mother-in-law quite regularly, and just listening to the compositions and wondering and being in awe of how people manage to compose these beautiful pieces of music and realizing that the nuances of the sounds and the different instruments, how all of these things play together, and just being in awe of how they've tapped into their own intuition, their own creativity, to realize that these things are going to bring so many other things to. I mean, yes, it brings to our hearing, obviously, but it brings in so many other things because it can be a visual experience as well. So I just, yeah, I love that. Thank you for bringing that, Jan. So, and I know you're going to bring us into a visual place because meditation, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And I do think that, it's true. I think that, when I used to go to the ballet quite often, I would have the same, like just this feeling of awe and the fact that people can hear something and be able to translate it through their body, to be able to move in a particular way where you understand what they're communicating. And it's just another way to connect and express whatever sensory information that they're getting. And maybe another time I'll share a story about my intuition about scent. I'll keep it in suspense. Should we go into meditation?
I think that would be a perfect time.
Okay. So settle into a comfortable position, letting your body be fully supported. Allow the breath to move naturally. And bring your awareness to the center of your chest, the space at the sternum where the ribs meet. Let this be your home base, the quiet center from which everything else unfolds. Feel the gentle movement here as you breathe, the rise, the fall, the subtle rhythm that is always with you. Rest in this center for a few breaths, allowing it to ground you. From this inner anchor, gently invite your awareness outward. Begin with touch, the first sense you notice from the inside out. Feel the contact between your body and the surface beneath you, the weight of your hands, the air on your skin. Notice the sensations without changing them, simply receiving what is already here. Keeping a soft attention on the chest, allow your awareness to widen to sound. Notice the sounds in the room, the sound of my voice, the quiet hum, the distant noise, or the stillness itself. Let sound come to you rather than reaching toward it. Sense how sound connects you to the space around you and the space within you. From there, allow awareness to expand to smell. Notice if you can sense any fragrances in the air, subtle, familiar, or neutral. No need to search, simply notice whether there is a scent or the absence of one. Let your center remain steady as your awareness opens. Then gently explore taste, even the faint, resting taste in the mouth. Perhaps it's subtle, perhaps it changes as you notice it. Let this sense bring you into the present moment, connecting inner awareness with the world just beyond you. And finally, allow your awareness to include sight. Even if the eyes are closed, Sense the light or darkness behind the eyelids. Shapes, shadows, colors that naturally appear. If your eyes are open, or you open them, soften your gaze and take in what you see about 8 inches in front of you. Try not to label or judge. From the center of your chest, feel how your senses extend outward, creating a fuller map of your world. Touch, sound, smell, taste, and sight. Each one a doorway into presence. Each one an everyday miracle. Each one a gateway to gratitude. Let your awareness now hold all this at once. Your center, your breath, your senses, your connection to the space around you. Feel how this widening brings you both grounding and spaciousness. Anchored in your core, you're open to the richness of experience. Take a gentle breath into your chest. And with each exhale, sense the whole body softening. Rest for a moment in this expanded awareness. And when you're ready, slowly draw your attention back to the center of the chest, the place where you began. Let this be your closing anchor, the inner home you can return to anytime. And when you feel ready, if your eyes are closed, you can let them float open. You can lift your gaze, carrying this sensory awareness and steadiness with you.
That was beautifully relaxing, Jan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Take a moment to connect with us during the week. Feel free to share the LinkedIn and Facebook groups and also our YouTube channel if that feels right to you. Our last session with Darlene is this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's going to be a lot. Well, it's actually going to be, it's with Darlene, but it's all 3 of us presenting this week as we focus on an integration of all we've covered and a celebration. So that should be a lot of fun. Also, Mary Jane and I have our last workshop of the year of 2026. I mean, 2025.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I know. I can't believe I'm thinking 2000 as we move into
Yes.
2026 is in my brain. But yeah, so
Yes.
2025 is this Sunday at 2 p.m. Yeah, illuminating joy. So it should be a lot of fun. We have some
Yes.
great things planned. That's 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you're more than welcome to join us. We'd love to have you. And I don't know, did I forget anything? Is that it, Mary Jane?
I think that's it. But yeah, there's still opportunity if you do want to join us for our collaboration for Rooted in Stillness with Darlene. You're more than welcome to join us for the last part of the series, and you would be receiving the recordings from the other 3 as well. So, it's a good thing, a little gift for yourself this holiday season, just to take some time and root in stillness with us. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun of both integration and celebration. So hopefully you can join us. That would be awesome.
Yep. Or if the time doesn't work for you to do evening, you could join us on Sunday at 2 p.m.
Yes, that too. Thank you,
Have
everyone.
a, yep, and have a wonderful weekend. See you next week, hopefully, or hear you next week. We love you all.